I have CEO of NEAR, Marieke here, NEAR Foundation right here, and CEO of Flowcarbon. So we have two powerhouse CEO women who I'm going to ask to please introduce yourselves, starting with Marieke.
Great. Hi, guys. Marieke Flament, CEO of the NEAR Foundation. NEAR is a layer 1 protocol, which is proof of stake. We've always had sustainability and usability at heart and at core since we started, so we're super excited to actually be embarking on this journey. Every year we are audited by South Pole, which actually enables us to not only check our carbon footprint, which is very, very tiny. Actually, the worst offenders are us humans traveling. We also offset that. And we are really thrilled to actually see the power of using a layer 1 like NEAR to then get further with solving our climate crisis.
Amazing. Yeah. Hi, everyone. Good morning. We're going to try to make the day super exciting and interactive and engaging because it's early and we're all together. But so appreciate you all being here, and we're going to have an amazing day together. For those of you who don't know, Flowcarbon is a project that is active across the carbon markets. If you don't know what the carbon markets are, you will learn a lot about them today throughout the course of the day. But essentially, Flowcarbon is building key tech infrastructure to enable the carbon markets to scale. The carbon markets are the market by which a carbon credit trades. And for all intents and purposes, the key thing to know is that a carbon credit is a unit or an asset that funds critical climate action, conservation, reforestation, afforestation, all kinds of incredible projects that are not financially viable without what's called carbon revenue, so without selling carbon credits. They become viable when they're able to produce these units and sell them. This market hasn't scaled, and the reason is because the infrastructure underpinning this market has been nascent and primitive. So Flowcarbon as a company is building infrastructure, much of which is on blockchain, to scale this market. And that involves financing early stage projects, getting them certified as grown-up, issued carbon projects, and then bringing those units, those carbon credits, on-chain and doing all kinds of innovative things on-chain with a composable tokenized carbon credit, including the ability to offset emissions for incredible protocols like the NEAR protocol. So that's Flowcarbon in a nutshell, and we are super excited to be partnering with NEAR on this. We're incredibly proud and just really excited to kick off the day with that announcement.
Yeah, well, in the tone of that announcement, so I'd love to hear from both of you why it's particularly exciting to be partnering together and what the power of blockchain to actually scale climate action specifically.
Well, I think, if you look at technology, blockchain has been criticized a lot for actually, doing harm to the climate. Yeah. And I think it's very exciting actually to see that real solutions and tangible actions are actually starting with technology. And I think if you look at the power of leveraging technology to do good and to help solve some of those crises, I think it's actually extremely empowering to see that. And when I look at our missions, and how we think actually about the world and going forward, I think when you have two organizations actually that are coming together to help solve part of that, I think that's fantastic. The other thing you mentioned in your intro, which I really liked, was at the end of the day, ReFi it's a community, and it's a lot of different projects and parts of the Web3 ecosystem that are coming together. And I think actually here, the collaboration we see amongst many different partners to try to solve that together is extremely powerful. So being aligned with, a mission and a goal, I think there is nothing better than wanting to solve a real problem and doing that together. What about you?
I could not agree more. So I'm going to start with picking up on the ReFi theme. So this conference, this summit, is special and unique. This is not about individual companies putting on a conference. This is the opposite of that. We are a community. ReFi is a community. If you're here and you see a lot of people that's amazing. It means you're integral to the community. If you're here and you actually are looking around and don't know that many people, you're also integral to the community because you're here and you share our mission and you want to learn. The mission really broadly being helping solve the climate crisis using Web3 or other innovative technology. We all care a lot about this planet and about advancing innovative climate mitigation solutions, and that's why we're all here. So everyone here is integral to that mission. We really are a community, and to my knowledge, this is the first such movement to exist on Web3 of all kinds of projects, protocols, individuals, investors coming together around a shared mission and building solutions that are interoperable with one another, that are integrating with one another from day one, that are all building on top of one another to create a holistic whole. It's really powerful, and if you're here, you're part of it. And so, really excited, and throughout the day, you'll meet more people, and you'll hear about more projects, and you'll plug yourself in however you can. So that, I think, is really powerful. At the sort of tech layer, how does blockchain support this? Why are we all at a Web3 conference and not like a graphic design conference talking about this? Because that is exactly what blockchain is, right? It is a technology that facilitates exactly that kind of instantaneous, permissionless interoperability. You can take one person's or one project's innovation, and then you can build on top of it. And so one project could be really well-resourced, have a really big team that's building something super complex, and then you can have an individual who picks up the baton and builds a little piece that's really essential, but that's maybe smaller, and plugs it in. And so that's what blockchain facilitates, and that's what's essential. From Flowcarbon's perspective, we are really focused on being able to take this unit that exists in the off-chain market called a carbon credit and bring it on chain so that it's usable by all of the projects that are innovating. Why? Because the more carbon credits that get bought and used, the bigger this market gets and the more projects get financed. It's a very simple and direct correlation. More carbon credits get plugged into protocols and projects and treasuries and whatever, and individual offsetting, automated offsetting that's facilitated by the composability of a carbon token. That's just an expansion of demand and use, and that funds more projects on the ground. It's taking Web3 and creating a direct, totally measurable real-world impact. So that's why we're all here. That's why we're all building on Web3, I think. Not to speak for everyone.
Well, actually, you do touch upon something important, which is mass adoption. Really important for Web3 adoption,
yep.
And really important for climate action at the individual level. So, Marieke, I know this is something you talk about a lot, and I would love to hear you talk a bit about mass adoption and how you think about it at NEAR.
Yeah, so mass adoption is actually why I joined NEAR. Because so previously, I started being in crypto, actually, I worked for Circle between 2015 and 2019. And at that time, we were always talking about tokenization of everything, and actually how one day, tokenizing carbon credits or anything else was going to be possible. And at that time, actually, it was not really possible to have a technology that was usable. And what does usable mean? It means that actually end users don't have to worry about, impossible login or keys or like 5 or 20 different steps to actually get to one place. Usability means that actually for end users, it's as simple as logging into your email account. And so at NEAR, that has been built from the start in the protocol and in the technology, and it's embedded and it's like thought through in that way. So from a user perspective, extremely usable. Then what usability means also in Web3 is actually you need to be friendly for developers, because ultimately to kickstart and having all those amazing projects that are being built on, you actually need developers. And if you're not usable for developers, then it's actually not possible to see innovation. What does usability mean for developers? Well, it means it's not just Rust or Solidity, which, by the way, are amazing languages, but are still very niche. But it's actually also opening up the doors, for example, to JavaScript, which is something that NEAR does. And also usability for developers means having like the best developer tools so that it's actually easy to start participating in. So that's the core of how NEAR thinks about usability. Another example I'll give actually is that our core metric, the one thing we look at, is actually monthly active users. It's not the price of the token. It's not TVL. Because actually, ultimately, that's not how you drive mainstream adoption, right? And if you really want that, you need to think, well, the value is going to be derived from having active, engaged users who do meaningful stuff, right? Not just like things that are like casino playing. So that's the core and the heart of how we think actually about this usability. And then the last piece I would add on that is ultimately, what is still here today is like there's a lot of like territorialism within Web3, right? There's a bit of like my layer one is better than your layer one and all of that. And actually, ultimately, at the end of the day, who cares? The end users are not going to care. What they're going to care about is this technology enabling me to do something that I couldn't do before? Is this technology enabling me to actually buy carbon credits that I really understand, that I can trace end to end, where I can have a real meaningful impact? And so I think that's why that's really important. And so ultimately at NEAR, and we're going to make more announcements in the coming days, but that's also how we see the world, and basically shifting how we actually think about multi-chain and having this real front end so that we can bring any chain, any projects actually coming together. And so that's how we think about usability. And that's also why, back to our partnership, it's really important when you think about usability to also try to solve some of those real problems that we have with solutions that are going to be really easy for end users to participate in. Because again, if you need 25 different steps to buy carbon credits, guess what? Nobody's going to buy them. And so that's not going to work.
Yeah, I mean, it's basic. It's principles that are from Web 2, right? The
Correct.
simpler an interface is,
Correct.
the more people will get through it. Every additional step of friction is drop off. Dana, did you want to jump in there with something?
Yeah, I mean, I'll reiterate that point, which is like, build something that your mom can use.
Yes.
For our purposes, build something that like the carbon offset buyer at X corporation can use, right? Do your best to get to that state, because that's what we need. That's how you get mass adoption of technology. And I think we're seeing a ton of that happening in broader Web3, and that is going to lead to, I think, a major inflection point in adoption. So for sure, it's UI, UX. Try to like even disguise the fact that there's stuff happening on chain if you can, if your protocol allows for that. For sure, that's one. The other thing, I'll take it up a level and say this. This maybe will be the only time I implore everyone in the room today. Probably not, but maybe, because I'm speaking a couple more times. So what we need to do, I hope everybody realizes what a momentous moment we're in for ReFi. Why? Because we as a community together have gotten this off-chain market called the carbon markets to very seriously and officially, in accordance with their normal official processes, consider moving their operations on chain, in part or entirely. There are formal consultations and pilots and programs happening. There was a huge announcement out of Gold Standard yesterday where Flowcarbon and a couple of other projects are entering a readiness phase with them to tokenize. The point being, there are these off-chain institutions that are officially thinking about moving on chain, and we all, any of us building in the carbon markets specifically, which is a lot of the ReFi projects, we have to do our best to be really responsible, really, really credible, really smart and sharp with everything that we do, so that we move this along and we build on this momentum and we get this market to adopt blockchain, because it is the right technology to scale this market, right? It's good for everyone and it's good for the planet. And so on top of building things that are super usable, which is very important, we also need to make sure that everything we do, every partnership that we pursue, every integration that we allow for whatever we build, we do so with the utmost credibility, responsibility, understanding that we're dealing with a whole off-chain ecosystem that is super important. And we need to maintain our credibility and reputability and continue to build on this momentum. So I think that's really important as well.
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. I think that's in line with another sort of historically, Web3 has been somewhat siloed. With different protocols sort of saying separately, projects being separately. ReFi, at least, is one example of different projects coming together. But how are you seeing that now with other projects, with other layer ones? Like, is there a movement away from this siloed mentality as much as just a reality?
Well, I think definitely, right? I think we talk a lot about multi-chain, right, or interoperability. I think those are words that we're hearing more and more. And while 2022 might have been very much like that small community and that one, the reality is that back to mainstream adoption, if we have silo communities, the pond is still small, right? And that's still not getting actually to like adoption. And so rather than having silos who feel they're competing against each other, we actually need to come together to solve bigger problems. And another point, and I think it's in the juncture of everything we're talking about, how to think about that is thinking about what are the bigger problems that we're trying to solve, right? And so when I look at, state of the world, there is a climate crisis. There is actually a loss in faith in our governments. There is actually, a loss in trust in how we actually interact with each other. And so it is of the utmost importance that actually we leverage the technology that we have in our hands to solve some of those bigger problems. And we have to do that, and I love what you said, Anna, in thinking through building businesses that are sustainable. And actually building a sustainable business, of course it means starting to think like carbon neutral, and that's almost like table stakes. You have to think that way. But it also means diversity and inclusion. And I will say shout out, because here when I look at the audience, this is, we are getting onto more diverse and inclusive actually group. And that's a must for actually building the world in which we believe. Because guess what? If we're building solutions with a myopic view of like what the world should be, then we're actually not going to solve problems that need to be solved for everybody. So I think thinking about that way, and therefore thinking there are bigger things to solve rather than saying, I'm going to go back again on like my layer one is better than your layer one. Like that is, ultimately it's not going to solve bigger problems. It's not going to get to mainstream adoption. It's actually not going to fulfill the promises that are the promises of blockchain and the promises of Web3.
Yeah, I mean, I would echo everything you said and don't have that much to add other than to say Web3 inherently is, I think, it leads us in a direction that is the opposite of being siloed, right? Inherently, much of what we do is permissionless and depends on interoperability. And so I think we have 5 minutes, Marissa's telling us. By the way, can everyone in the back hear just for the rest of the day? Yeah, totally? Okay, and not just me? You could hear everyone? Awesome. Great. Okay. So I think the Web3 ethos is to not be siloed, but to be interoperable, whether, within other projects that are on a particular chain, and then for those of us that are bridging assets, making them multi-chain and really supporting a robust and secure multi-chain ecosystem is really important also.
Well, in the interest of being on time, I'm not going to ask my next question. I'm going to skip to the following.
Okay.
So the market conditions right now, it's obviously a bear market. How do we think about all of these themes of collaboration, of mass adoption against a market that's maybe more challenging than we would have thought a year ago?
Well, I think one word that comes to mind is responsibility. And actually, I think bear markets are great, obviously, to build. And to build, it's about thinking long term, right? Again, we're not in a casino pool. We are actually trying to leverage technology to solve real problems. And so for doing that, I think we're going to see a lot of things, coming out of Web3, which I think is actually not that bad. And then we're going to have a real focus on getting on and building things and solving real problems together, because I think, again, as you mentioned, the fact that we're in this bear market actually helps strengthen relationship and say, like, okay, how do we actually leverage the resources we have together to make, movement forward and actually to solve the problems that we want to solve.
Yeah. I'll answer by saying what you've all probably heard a million times. It's not going to be anything super groundbreaking because this topic comes up all the time, and the answers are given, and I think they're good ones, which is to say bear markets are very healthy. It forces discipline. It forces being conservative with resources. It forces being scrappy and finding solutions that are not just throw money at it, right? And so it also forces an elevation of quality, because things that maybe are cool but don't have an immediate use case or any use case, don't have long-term relevance or viability or aren't that compelling, they won't necessarily get funded. Now, I think that there's a danger in that where things that are really compelling might not get funding. And so I think it behooves us to have a lot of conversations and talk to one another and find what is really compelling, and then lift up the ideas and the individuals and the projects that we think really deserve attention in a market where that's really hard to get. But generally, I think bear markets have been historically, and this one will be no exception, very, very healthy.
So in the coming year, it sounds like what you're looking forward to is buckling down and building, and I think credibility is also somewhat of a theme that I'm hearing from both of you, which is it's a time to build credibly, for the market to gain some credibility outside of a hype cycle, and similarly a time for some serious heads down work.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, look, we're going to get hit by regulation pretty hard, right? And I think we have a collective responsibility to show beyond that, to show like the real power that Web3 can do, and the belief that we have in that technology. And so being heads down, building responsibility with that core and heart, actually doing good work and great things, I think is going to be the theme of this bear market.
And I think that'll be very productive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it is, we're almost at time. I just want to give each of you a chance, if there's anything you want to end off with, or any final thoughts or remarks. Now's your moment.
I, for one, am super grateful to be partnered with the NEAR Foundation. I'm super grateful to have started off the day with Marieke. It's going to be a great day. It's going to be really fun, I promise. The panels are all really interesting, full of very smart people doing really important things. And then there's also a lot of people to meet. So go to the way back and keep your voice down when you mingle, but do a lot of mingling. Meet a lot of friends.
And I'll just end by saying we're super proud to partnering for today and actually to partner with the Flowcarbon.
Yep.
And I think I'm in awe of those two women here. And so it's an amazing day to start, an amazing way to start the day and to kick off also ETHDenver. So thank you all.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.